Chapter 4. Get the Point. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce you to Jerry, who will be assisting me in your personal development training and the development of your system. Jerry is 42 years old and has been married for over 20 years. He has 3 beautiful children aged 12, 14, and 16. Jerry is self-employed and owns and operates a small electronics shop and also considers himself to be, an above-average chess player. Now, although Jerry is a fictional character and created solely for the purpose of assisting me in your training, let's just pretend that I first met Jerry at a business lunch being hosted by the local chamber. Jerry and I hit it off right from the start. After a few additional meetings, he expressed an interest in learning more about the personal development system. At the time, he was experiencing some cash flow problems. He also had a number of health issues. He was about 25 pounds overweight, a heavy smoker, and felt that lately his alcohol intake was becoming a problem. After taking the time to really get to know Jerry and his situation, I was confident that my system of personal development would be of great benefit to him. I was not, however, convinced that Jerry was really committed to producing what I refer to as lasting results. The reason for my lack of belief in his commitment was based on the language he would use to communicate his situation. For an example, he would say things such as, "I really should cut down on the cigarettes and the booze, but every time I try, something happens and makes me go back on them." Or when he talked about his problems with his wife, he would say things like, "I know I should try harder, but she really knows how to push my buttons," or "she just doesn't understand the amount of stress I'm under." Now, the problem with Jerry's way of thinking was he was shifting the blame. For an example, he'd say something would always happen to make me go back on the cigarettes or the drink. Or he would say he should try harder, but his wife just knows how to push his buttons, or she just doesn't understand. At the end of the day, Jerry just wasn't taking ownership of his problems. I had to get Jerry to understand that in order for my system to produce long-term results, he had to own up to his problems and get himself to the point that he must change and not that he should change. In the event that you haven't figured it out yet, this also holds true for you. I believe that because Jerry wasn't owning up to his problems and was shifting the blame, he hadn't created enough pain in his life to make change a must. I knew that in order for Jerry to create a lasting change in his life, he had to get to the point that his current situation was so painful he literally couldn't take it anymore. He had to get to the point that he truly felt he must change, and he must change now. With this in mind, I explained to Jerry that I would like to help him, but I simply did not believe he was up to the challenge. Jerry's first reaction was to become somewhat angry at my reply. "What do you mean I'm not up to the challenge?" he replied in a sharp tone. "You don't know what I can or cannot do." This continued for the next few moments until I simply replied to his comments with the words, "Convince me." At first, poor Jerry looked at me in a state of confusion before he finally replied, "What do you mean by convince me?" I went on to explain to Jerry all the reasons I had for not being convinced he was ready to create a lasting change. But there was an exercise he could do that would not only convince me, but more importantly, convince him. I continued to explain to Jerry an exercise I had requested individuals to do several times in the past. The exercise I asked Jerry to do was to write a short essay on how he honestly believed his life would be in 5 years. 5 years' time if he hadn't changed. To my delight, Jerry was more than up for the challenge and returned the next day with the following essay. "Where will I be? Where will I be in 5 years from now if I don't change? More than likely, I'll be divorced. I'll be living on my own in some run-down, dirty apartment. My business would have gone bankrupt, and I'll be lucky to be able to hold down a job because, my drinking would have gotten so far out of hand that most likely I'll be an alcoholic. My kids will do their best to keep in touch with me. However, I have no doubt that over time, their visits will become less and less, and even when they do visit, I will always see the disappointment in their eyes. They will no longer be able to count on me to provide for them with guidance or even money for the things like, well, education, or perhaps even a simple thing like a proper birthday present. Of course, their mother, being the strong woman that she is, will have moved on and most likely have a new man in her life, which of course she'll deserve. Although I won't be 50, thanks to the cigarettes and the booze, I will easily pass for a man 10 years older. I will be fat with no energy. I will wake up every morning coughing and feeling the effects from the night before. Any and all potential that I possess in my earlier days will have long since vanished. As I walk down the street, I will undoubtedly meet people who knew me back when I used to be someone. They will pass themselves and say hello, but I will know they only pity me and will be thinking to themselves, what a waste of a life. After reading Jerry's essay, there was absolutely no question in my mind that the man standing before me was not the same man who stood before me the previous day. Something had changed in him. I could see it in his eyes. I could hear it in his words. I extended my hand and said, "Congratulations, you're halfway there." Jerry looked more confused than he had the previous day when I asked him to convince me. "Halfway to where?" he asked. "Halfway done with the exercise," I replied. I continued to explain that the exercise was a two-part exercise. The second part of the exercise was to write a brief essay on where he will be 5 years from now if he did make the changes in his life he desired to make. Being the good sport that Jerry is, he had no problem accepting part 2 of the exercise and returned the very next day with the following. "Where will I be?" Part 2. "It's great to be alive. I have just completed my morning run, and I'm getting ready to have a late breakfast with Lorraine. I have decided to take the day off because, truthfully, I feel I deserve it. After all, I've been working hard to get things ready for the grand opening of our third store, the biggest and best by far. Lorraine and I have decided to pay a surprise visit to Marie and Kim down at the university and take them shopping. They have a ski trip coming up, and we want to make sure they have everything they need. Michael is disappointed he can't go, but with the grand opening of the new store, I can't do without him. He'll be okay. He has our trip to Australia to look forward to this summer. Next week the Chamber is hosting a charity dinner, so I sponsored a table and will be giving my managers a night out. It should be fun, and Lorraine is looking forward to a good meal and a night of dancing. Of course, I'll be the designated driver, but that's fine with me. It'll give me a chance to test out the new BMW on the freeway. Life is really good." As you can imagine, after reading the above, I was more than convinced that Jerry was ready to begin his journey to creating the lasting change in his life. But what do you think the main objective I had by having Jerry complete the exercise? Well, if you said to have Jerry create pain to not changing and create pleasure by making some changes, you'd be 100% correct. And this is exactly what I want you to do right now. I want you to do the same exercise as Jerry. Write a brief story or essay on what your life would be like in 5 years if you don't change. Really take the time to think about it, and don't be easy on yourself. Think seriously about your relationships, your health. Think of who and what you'll lose in your life. Think about your finances, and think about all the things you'll never experience to the fullest if you don't change the direction of your life right now. Once you have completed writing about how your life will be if you don't change, take a few moments to read, and more importantly, really feel the effect. Take enough time to really feel and experience the emotion of sadness and a sense of loss. Next, I want you to take the time to complete part 2 of the exercise, which is the fun part. Write about how amazing your life will be in 5 years if you make a committed decision right now to create the life you desire. Don't hold back. Write about how amazing your relationships will be, how amazing you'll look and feel, how much you have grown, and how secure you are financially. When you're finished writing, take some time to really feel the effects of living the life you desire. Feel all the positive emotions and create a clear vision in your mind of exactly what a day in your future life will be like. I cannot stress enough how important this exercise is. Please do not continue with this chapter until you have completed both parts of the exercise. Did you do it? If you haven't, please do not continue until you have. If you have completed the exercise, hopefully you now have some pain associated with not changing and some pleasure associated with changing. Once I was convinced that Jerry was ready to make what I refer to as lasting change, we got started. Similar to what you and I did in the previous chapter, I guided Jerry through the setup of his own personal development system. I had him write out his 4 key areas, then I helped him to select his action items, and finally I helped him to assign his point. When he was finished, his system looked something like this. Personal development system, month and year. Relationships, Lorraine, 1/4 point. Kids, 1/4 point. Friends and associates, 1/4 point. Everyone else, 1/4 point. Health and fitness, 15 cigarettes max, 1/4 point. Light exercise, 1/4 point. No eating after 8 p.m., 1/4 point. No fast food, 1/4 point. Personal growth, read, 1/4 point. Play/study chess, 1/4 point. Online course, 1 point. Creative writing, 1/2 point. Hobby, 1/4 point. Business/career and finances. Productive, 1/8 point. Organized, 1/8 point. Professional, 1/8 point. Patient, 1/8 point. Budget, 1/4 point. Ways to earn more, 20 minutes, 1/4 point. Ways to spend less, 20 minutes, 1/4 point. So what's next? Jerry asked as we finished putting the final touches on his personal development system. I replied by instructing Jerry to begin the process of directing his focus to the 4 key areas listed in his system. Begin paying special attention to your relationships and completing as many of the actions on your list in the other key areas as possible. I finished by telling him just do his best and not be overly hard on himself in the event he didn't have enough time or find it possible to complete every action listed within his system. It's all about progress, not perfection, I assured him. I then instructed him to return the following day and update me on his progress. The following day, Jerry returned with his system in hand. I asked him how he felt he did. He simply replied, "I really don't know." I assured him by saying at this point it really didn't matter, but we would soon find out. I presented Jerry with a blank page from a calendar that looked something like this. Again, if you're only listening to the audio version, please download the free workbook at www.onesourceworkbook.com. You'll need it to see the illustrations, and it'll make things much easier for you. I then instructed Jerry to write in the dates on the calendar. Once he had finished the task, I took the sheet and his system that we had completed the previous day and began asking him questions. In regards to your relationships, how do you feel you got on with Lorraine yesterday? I asked. At first, he seemed put off, but then replied by saying, "Pretty good, I guess." I then asked him if he felt it was good enough to earn a 1/4 point. He took a moment to think about it and said, "Yes." So, based on his answer, I wrote a small 1/4 point on the calendar under the previous day. Next, I asked him, "How about the kids? Do you feel you earned a 1/4 point there?" Jerry smiled as if to say, I think I know where you're going with this. He replied by saying yes. So I added another 1/4 point under the first one. And what about your friends and associates? I asked. Jerry took a moment to think about his answer before replying. Well, I must admit, I was a little bit short with one of my staff members yesterday. For this, I simply put a dot under the previous 1/4 point. What about everyone else you came into contact with? I asked. Again, Jerry took a few moments to think before he answered. I did have an argument with one of my customers over the return of an item, but that really wasn't my fault, he quickly added. Did the customer force you to argue? I asked. Well, no, he replied. After hearing his answer, I simply placed another black dot under the first one above it. When I had completed the first key area in Jerry's calendar, it looked like this. Next, I began to question Jerry on how he did in the key area of health and fitness. The nice thing about this key area is that it's quite easy to score because the action items are very straightforward. The answers are either yes I did or no I didn't. For an example, with Jerry, he managed to stick to only smoking 15 cigarettes, he did his light exercise, did not eat after 8 p.m., and did not eat any fast food, so he got a maximum point, or 1 full point in total in this key area. So now the calendar looked like this. The next key area to be reviewed and recorded was the area of personal development. This was an easy one, as last night is the night Jerry had dedicated to taking the online course he had recently signed up for. The course took up the entire evening, so he received the maximum amount allowed for any of the key areas, which is a score of 1 full point. Last to be rated was the key area of business/finance. Similar to the area of relationships, I explained to Jerry, this could be a tricky one simply because not all of the action items are straightforward. I continued to explain that he would have to decide if he believed he earned a point, traits, and or virtues based on his performance the previous day. After taking a little time to think and reflect on the previous day, Jerry announced that he did believe he was productive and he was organized, which was worth 1/8 of a point each. Combined, they were worth a total of 1/4 point. However, based on the fact that he had an argument with his customer, he was uncertain as to what to do in regards to the point for being professional or patient. That argument already cost me a 1/4 point in my relationships, Jerry started. Is this going to cost me again? Well, allow me to answer your question with a question. Do you believe you were acting in a professional or patient manner when you allowed yourself to get into an argument with a paying customer? Absolutely not, Jerry replied in a slightly embarrassed tone. Think of it this way, I continued. Due to the fact that your argument has cost you a 1/4 point in not just one, but 2 separate key areas, you will link up additional pain to that sort of behavior. This will assist you in the future when you find yourself in a similar situation and hopefully remind you to act in a more professional and patient manner. Jerry slowly grinned and nodded his head as if to say, I get it, before continuing to update me on the remainder of how he got on in the key area of his business and finance. He went on to tell me he did, in fact, take about 30 minutes to review all of the month's spendings and took time to shop around for a better deal on his car insurance. I found out that because Lorraine and I are both insured with the same company, we are entitled to a 10% discount. I placed a call to my insurance company today and they implemented the discount immediately, so I'm already saving money. Good for you, I replied. That's another 1/4 point to add to your daily total. Anything else? Jerry went on to explain how he went slightly over on his daily budget, so he did not believe he earned a 1/4 point in this area. That's okay, I explained. Remember, it's all about progress, not perfection. When Jerry and I completed assigning his points to the key area, his calendar looked something like this. I then quickly added up Jerry's total points. He had a half a point for his relationship, a full point for his health and fitness, another full point for his personal growth, and a half a point for his business and finances. Altogether, he had 3 points. "Excellent! You're off to a good start," I commented. He looked to me in a confused state before replying, "But I didn't get everything done. How good of a start can that really be?" "That's the beauty of the system," I explained. "You don't have to get everything done, and you don't have to do everything right. You see, the system allows for imperfections. After all, the goal here is not to become perfect. The goal is to simply create balance in your life." I then presented the following rating system that works in conjunction with the system to Jerry. 1 equals below average. 2 equals average. 3 equals successful. 4 equals very successful. After taking the time to explain the rating system, I once again reassured him he was off to a great start before asking him the following question. "Based on our rating system, what standard would you like to set as a goal to shoot for the upcoming week?" Jerry took a moment to think before stating that he would love to have a very successful week. However, as he was only getting started, would be more than happy to have a successful week. "Great," I replied. "Do your best to get a minimum of 3 points per day out of a possible 4 points. I then instructed him to continue using the system every day and to return with his results in 1 week.